That being said, again, thank you for coming, and at this time I'd like to introduce Bernie Geisel, whose family has been farming here in Door County for 125 plus years now, and he's going to give us a history of the Geisel family. Bernie?
Hey. Thank you, Don. I've been asked to have all the relatives of the Geisel family just stand up for just a second. Okay. Okay, hello. My name is Bernie Geisel. It's 2013, and I'm going to take you on to a long time ago with my wonderful Geisel family. I'm 74 years old, and I am the oldest living branch in the Geisel tree. I find it to be my duty to document what I know and to establish a foundation of our family for the future descendants to build upon. Fortunately, I have some verification as to where they came from and also some valuable photos. They are very old, but they will aid in reconstruction their lifestyles. Since I am not a polished speaker, nor have I any public speaking experience, I'll use for a guide the same words that is written on a sign that's nailed to my daughter's Jamie Henschel sawmill shed. It reads, "This ain't no Burger King. You don't get it your way. You're going to get it my way, or you don't get it at all." Okay, this is the Geisel family farm in 1915, looking right down Clarks Lake Road to the east. And that's the way it looks today. Okay. This is my grandpa and grandma Geisel. That's Hermann Geisel Sr. He was born in Dublin, Province of Saxony, Germany on Christmas Day in 1856, and he died here in August 1921. His oldest son, William, told me, Bernard, that Hermann Sr. was a logger for a company on Washington Island. He felt trapped on the island, so one night in the spring before the ice broke up, he and two other men walked across the ice to the mainland. Somehow he ended up in Algoma area, where he met and he married Anna Pavlik in 1886. They then bought 80 acres in the town of Sevastopol, Section 1 on Clarks Lake Road. I asked Uncle Bill if his dad ever wrote letters to his family in Germany. He said he did. He said he did, but when he told them that he'd bought 80 acres, the letters stopped. Presumably, they thought he'd lost his mind, because in Germany, owning that much land would only have been a dream. Together, Hermann Sr. and Anna had 4 children. They were William, born in 1888. He died in 1971. Hulda, born in 1890 and died in 1949. Herman Jr. was born in 1897 and died in 1973. And lastly, Emil, which was my dad. He was born in 1900 and he died in 1959. Okay. Next. Okay, this is my great-grandpa and grandma, Casper and Josephine Pavlik. That was my grandma Geisel's mother and dad. Casper was born in 1832 and died in 1916 at 83 years old. His wife, Josephine Bunda, born in 1846 and died in 1923. They were both born in Pilsen, Bohemia. They had 3 children born in Bohemia. Anna in 1865, Frank in 1869, and Mary, we don't know what year she was born, and in 1870 they came to Wisconsin. They bought farmland northeast of Coburg on Curve Road. And then tragedy struck their family. their oldest, I'm sure it was their oldest girl, Mary. She was, went to see her friends just down the road, a half a mile, and it got to be smoky and very hot, and she got scared and she wanted to go home. And she ran home, but she didn't make it. That was when the Peshtigo fire went through. But at that time, in that area, they called it the Brussels fire, and she died. They found her dead the next day. But their house burnt down at that time too, and they were very devastated. But they regrouped, and they knew they had to get over it, and they rebuilt the house, and after that they had 3 more children. Catherine was born in 1874, and she married Joe Plutz, and she died in 1965. And then she had 2 more sons, Albert, born in 1876, and Emil Pavlik in 1878. They farmed in Coburg area on Curve Road, and they had a nice farm. And then later on, their oldest son, Frank, took over the farm, and his wife, Mary. And they farmed, and then when they got older, they moved up to Sevastopol. They lived on Leist Road. And when Casper died in 1921, I believe it is, then Josephine went to live with her son, Albert. And let's see, and Frank Pavlik was running the homestead of the Pavliks, and then he turned it over to his son, Tony, and his wife, Bee. They had 4 children, Bob Pavlik, and David, and Jerry, and Jeannie. And Bob still retains some of the acreage, and David still has some of the acreage, but the original homestead was sold to a different person. And Jeannie Pavlik built a home just to the south of the homestead, and she's married to Terry Wiegand. Okay. And that's my dad on the left, Emil, and Herman, my Uncle Herman, sitting down. And my dad was born in 1900, so, well, you can guess about how old he is. Okay, and that's my Uncle Herman. That he always, when he wanted to see a picture of Herman, that's the one he always wanted to be shown with, because it was the time, I guess, he was being drafted, and they took a picture, and he was proud of it. And when he was drafted, he got as far as in Milwaukee, and then he was told that there was an armistice sign that he was able to come home, and I guess he was really overjoyed. Okay, that's my Aunt Hulda. That's my dad's sister, and as a young girl. Okay, that's well, that's my Uncle Bill, the tall one, and his daughter, his sister Hulda, and my Uncle Herman, the little guy. Okay, and here's where Joe Bocek married my Aunt Hulda Geisel. And I think it was about 1913, if I'm not mistaken. And then they moved to Saskatchewan, Canada, after they got married. And this is their first home up on the prairies of Saskatchewan, located near Hodgeville, Saskatchewan. And the 2 boys sitting on the porch, that's their 2 oldest sons, Roy and Floyd. And it's been said about that they were there, and Joe Bocek, he was supposed to get to a thrashing. They were thrashing out in the prairie, and he was late in getting there, and he hitched up his team and his wagon, and he was raced through the yard to get there, and he got too close to the corner of the house, and he caught the corner of the kitchen and spilt the dishes and tipped the pictures off the wall. It was not a happy day for Hulda. I don't think it was a happy night for Joe either. So, okay. Okay, this is the Geisel's first car, 1917 Model T Ford. They bought it from Ham Paul in Velmy. And that's my Uncle Bill at the driver's seat there, and 2 of his cousins, 2 of the Plutzes in the back. The guys on a motorcycle, I do not know. So, okay. Okay, here's my dad. He went to Canada to live with his sister, and he's working up there. He's got a 6-horse hitch. He's pulling an 18-foot harrow, and that The boy standing on the wheel is my dad's nephew. That was Floyd Bocek. Okay, and this here is the rig. It said on the back the picture that he had plowed 160 acres with it last summer. It's a 6-horse hitch. Okay, and here's my dad. In different times up there, he worked for a guy that was boring a well, not drilling a well, boring it. They didn't have rocks like we do out here. But the cylinder went down, and then there was an auger inside there. They would fill up the cylinder with ground, and then they'd pull that back up and clean it all out, and then drink it back down again until they get down to water. So that was. Okay. That's John Geisel up in Saskatchewan, and that's his Model T. And he's the one that my dad worked for with the steam engines and the thrash machine. Okay. Okay, there's the rig he worked on. But at first he didn't work on the engine or the thrash machine. My dad didn't. He was just a spiker. He had to go load up his load of bundles. They give him a team and a wagon, and you were expected at that time to load and unload 6 to 8 loads a day by yourself. And my dad was getting nosebleeds, and John Geisel seen that. And he says, you can't go on like that. I need somebody to help me on the separator and on the engine. So he asked my dad to help him there. And that was a little bit not such pressure work. So, okay, and here's the engine he was running up there. A Case 75 horse. Okay, here he's running the engine. He's on the left there. They fire it with straw. There's no trees up in Saskatchewan, and straw was free. And he said, well, there was like a big straw chute on the engine, and you'd shove straw in there until you start seeing the smoke coming out of it. Then that was time to shove another wad in, and they kept the pressure up that way, kept the fire burning. Okay, here's a threshing scene. You can see that the elevator going way up high with the scale on top. They didn't bag up their grain. What they did, they had little granaries, maybe 10 feet wide and maybe 15 feet long, and they'd pull them alongside of the alongside the separator, and then they'd have the long spout run the grain right into the granary. And then in the wintertime, they'd go out there with their horse and sleigh and shovel the stuff on their sleigh and then haul it into town for sale. But it just shows all the people that got to work there. Okay, and here's just a closer picture than the other one. Okay, that's my dad on the bottom kneeling. He's always the dirtiest one in the bunch. But he was firing the engine, and that day my dad said it was so windy they kept switching the machine around to have the wind be favorable to him. But as soon as they get it switched, the wind would shift again, and they'd do it again. And finally, John Geisel said, "That's enough. We're going to shut her down for the day." And they took this picture. You can see how windy it is. One guy's hanging onto his cap, and even the dog, look at his ears blowing away. Okay. Okay, then after threshing season was over, up in Saskatchewan, there isn't that much to do. They don't have dairy cows to speak of, and it gets to be a kind of a slack time. So him and another guy, they went out to British Columbia in the logging woods. And that's my dad on the right there. That's overseeing the camp. And he worked there in the wintertime. Okay. Okay. This is a sprinkler. It's a big wooden tank on a sleigh. And you'd take it down to the river and fill it up with water. What they did then, you worked at night, all night long. And while it was good and cold, so it would free, then when you got the thing full, but how you fill it, you drop the barrel out down a slide into the river, then you pull it up with one of the horses and dump it in and get another barrel full until it got full. Then you go out on the logging roads and you'd open up the bungs and let it sprinkle out to make ice. And he worked all night, and then in the morning he could come home and have breakfast, and then he was expected to go to bed. But he said he couldn't sleep very long because you'd hear the blacksmith pounding down on the anvil, and so he'd get up and he'd walk down there and help in the blacksmith shop a little bit. Then he started thinking, up where he loads that tank up, it was very slippery. It was all icy, and then it got wet and water, and you had to be very careful, and you couldn't see just with a lantern. And then he started thinking, them horses, they got ice cleats on their shoes, and they can walk around fine. So he thought, by God, if I can fashion a little pair of horseshoes with ice cleats on my boots, I could probably do that too. So he did. And yeah, he said it was like night and day. I could walk around that ice like it was bare ground. And then spring started coming, and well, the trails were starting to break up, so the boss took him off the sprinkler and said, you can go back and help him load logs and stuff. And well, they were coming in from going in for supper, and this big Swede, he says, hey, Emil, you know, all winter long, he says, I wrestled everybody in the camp, and I beat every one of them. But I never had a chance to wrestle you because you were always out in that sprinkler. How about you and I have a little wrestle, and then I can say I beat you. I can say I'm the undefeated champion of the camp. And my dad said no. There was no way in hell he could beat that guy. And then the other loggers started chanting, come on, Emil, come on, Emil. And geez. Well, then my dad spotted over in the yard there was a ice had formed, and there was a little water on top of it. And he thought, my God, I got these cleats on my shoes. He said, how about we wrestle out in the middle of that ice pond? Oh, and the loggers, they thought that was a great idea. So, well, the Swede agreed to, and they went out there. And my dad said, all I had to do was shimmy around a little bit, get them off balance, and I dropped them. And that was it. Okay. And I asked him, was the Swede mad that you did that? No, he said, all the loggers were friendly. We had never no problem up there. I said, did you tell them? Did you tell them that you had the advantage with them cleats on your shoes? And I'm sure he didn't tell them, because if he'd have told them, I don't think I'd be here today. Okay, here's the guys in the logging camp. My dad is the fourth one on the left up there. And, okay, here's after he was off the sprinkler, then they put him on jobs like this. That's the log jammer there to pick up the logs and load them on the sleigh. Okay, yeah, here's another picture of it. There's a load of logs. You can see where he sprinkled the ice on the road. It's just there. The rest of it looks like it's starting to melt, and it's just the ice left that it could still haul a little bit yet. And there it must be spring coming on. And he's probably just sitting there on a Sunday afternoon. You can see the snow is gone around the place. And I suppose it's getting ready for the camp to break up. And he's just sitting there, I imagine, pondering about how things went this last winter, and also what it's going to be like when he gets back to the prairie. Okay, he got back to the prairie. That's his brother-in-law and my uncle Joe Bocek. And that's my dad sitting on the bench there and turning the crank. They didn't have no electricity, but they were shearing the winter hair off the horse. My dad would turn the crank, and Joe was shearing it off. You can see. Okay, here they're planting their wheat. My dad must have took the picture because he's not on it, and he's driving that hitch there with the 18-foot of harrow before the drill. Okay. Then he came back to, this is a picture of, they're thrashing at the homestead on Clark's Lake Road in Section 1. And the Zettel brothers are thrashing, Hans and Rudolph, I believe it is. And that's my grandpa a little bit further back with the beard on. And that's one of the last pictures they took of him, because he died very shortly after that. And then my dad run this engine after a while too. Okay. Oh, here's my family. That's my grandma Geisel on the bottom left, my Aunt Hulda on the right bottom, And then Uncle Herman is up in the back left, Uncle Bill is in the middle, and my dad is on the right. And that's a picture of the Geisel farmstead. Okay, there's my dad running the steamer for the Zettel brothers. I think that's the engine he wanted to buy and to separate. He wanted to sell it to him later on, and my Uncle Bill says no. He says it needs a lot of repair, and McCormick Dearns come out with a good 1530 now, and coming out with an all steel thresher. He said we'll buy a new rig, and then we can thresh, and then we can use it for plowing and for other work around the farm. Okay. Oh, here's my Uncle Bill butchering a pig, and well, the Geisels knew how to survive. You had to do what you got to do. And then my grandma, she had a big garden. She knew how to can, and winter was a good time to butcher because they could. There was no flies or nothing around, no dust, and you could freeze the meat. Then they had a smokehouse. The men had more time to tend the smokehouse with their bacons and sausage they made and stuff, and that's that hound on the left down there. That was Herman's hound. They said he could go down the swamp and catch a rabbit and bring it home live. What he did with it after that, I don't know. Oh, back up one second. Yeah, you can see his ears were so long that my grandma Geisel, she made a piece of cloth that she could tie his ears back when she fed him milk and dish. Now, if that picture offends anybody, if there's anybody near from the animal rights group, I can rest your mind in the comfort zone again when I tell you, if animals weren't meant to eat, God wouldn't have made them out of meat. That's my dad with a team of horses. Okay, that's the threshing machine that the Geisel brothers bought. They bought that rig brand spanking new. And they did a lot of threshing with it. You don't think, threshing isn't always a clean job. The 1530 there is laboring away all she can do. And the thrash machine is sitting back in there. You can hardly see it. But the dust and the wind and the chaff is blowing around. And that's the way it was. There's another set of it at a different location. One year they started trashing in August, and they ended up on Halloween night. Spent a lot of time. Okay, then 1934, my dad and mother got married, and that's my Uncle Ernest, my mother's brother on the left, and the other people I don't know. And well, I can see my dad cleaned up. Yep, there they are again. I think the car is a 1933 Chevrolet. Okay, they're trashing here right across the road from my place where I live now, on Brower Road. And it appears to me that the Plutz family came over to visit when they got to the house, and they said, my mother and my grandma must have said that they're trashing over for Harry Hayne. Well, I suppose they said, well, let's go over there and see how things are going. Well, they did, and then you can see my Uncle Herman's on the left, and one of the Plutz is on the tall guy with the white clothes on. Then my Katie Plutz, that was my grandma's sister, and my dad and mother, and my grandma Geisel, and Joe Plutz, and Simon Plutz, and Martha Plutz. The rest of the people I don't know. Okay. Here they must have got done grinding feed. They had the tractor all warmed up, and they apparently wanted to break a hole over to the car shed so they could go to town. And they're breaking a hole through the snowbank. Uncle Bill is watching them. Okay, that was the days before snow blowers and snow plows. That's the 33 Chevrolet. They must have chains on the back and knobby tires and going out. Okay, I didn't get water. Okay, here's me and Gert. We're just playing on the snowbank. That's Uncle Herman. He's down in Clark's Lake fishing. Okay, here's a load of hay on the 27 Chevrolet truck. That's a load of bales that you'd bale in the barn with the stationary hay press like we do with the threshery, and then haul them to wherever they're going to sell them. It could have been to somebody around the neighborhood, or else could be down to Sturgeon Bay to a railroad car. That's just another picture of the same truck with moose hay on. And they bought this 37 Chevrolet, which I still got, with a load of oats on there that they're gonna sell. See that big load. Okay, here they're crushing stones behind the sheds. And the reason I put this one, it's not a great picture, but my dad is on the left, Herman's in the middle, and Uncle Bill is on the right. But I want you to see that old truck. It's an old international truck from the 1920s, and it had no cab, no fenders, no windows, no doors, but it was Uncle Bill's truck. And when he took it someplace, me and my sister Gert had to get a ride on it. And just one particular day, he had to go back to the Strand farm and get some lumber. Jeez. And so we got a ride with him. He went out the driveway, up the road, down the Strand Road, and back to the Strand barn. And he got his lumber. Then on the way home, he decided to come a different way. He decided to come through the field. And then he got by the corn patch, and he says he's going to stop here, and he's going to pick up some cobs that he thinks are mature enough to have corn on the cob tonight for supper. And he told me and Gert to stay in the truck. Well, he come back with his armful of corn cobs, and he looked at Gert and he says, "Where's Bernard?" Well, she said he walked into the corn patch. And Bill told me at a later date, he was just hysterical. He didn't know how he's going to find me. And he hollered and called, and I'm sure he was praying and swearing at the same time. And well, then he said Gert tried to comfort him. She told him, "Don't worry about him, Uncle Bill. You'll find him when you cut the corn." Okay, next. Okay, this is the man in the back to the left. That's Emil Pavlik. That's Grandma's Grandma's brother, and the other guy is Albert. That's Grandma's brother also. And then way on the left is Bertha. That'd be Emil's wife. And the other lady on the left would be Lena. The one on the right, I don't know. Here they're back in the back 80, back on off a tower. Well, I should say across from Henschel's Orchard somewhere there. They're breaking up new land that's never been plowed with a breaker plow and a 1530. That's Herman on the tractor, my dad on the plow, and Bill doing whatever he's got to do. Okay, here's their horses. The one in the middle you've seen before when he was on the plow, and the other two I think are waiting to get big enough to get the harnesses on. Okay, here they got the harnesses on now, and that was the last team the Geisels had. Their names were Prince and Nellie. Okay, here's my dad. Herman's on the 1530 on the left. He's pulling an Oliver disc plow, and my dad's on the 816 pulling a John Deere manure spreader. He must have did some work on the 816 because he's got the hoods taken off. And I suppose he's going to adjust the valves or something, then he'll put them back on. Okay, and here every spring Bill always had some building project to do. And he would get the saw, they'd log all winter in a swamp. And then he'd get a sawmill, a portable sawmill come in and saw the logs. I believe that's August Wilkie, and that's our 1530 on on a saw. Okay. Oh, here's me and Shirley. That's my H16. The other H16 I never seen, but and I always was yearning to find one, and they're very hard to find. And then one day, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, I brought the mail in for at dinner time, and I was just paging through a Fastline magazine, and there was a picture of an H16 for sale. I called the guy right away. He was down in Lamira. And I said, I'm going down there this weekend to my daughter in Milwaukee, and I'd like to look at it. I told him I'm a serious buyer, and if it's what I want, I'm going to buy it. And so he held it for me. I got down there, and he was a very nice person. I made a deal, and that's mine. That's that tractor, I believe, is brand spanking new. It's a Farmall F12 and a new grain drill. They always had a plant with horses before, but this is the first tractor-driven one. And that's my dad on the grain drill and my sister Gertie. And here's Herman, he's cultivating corn. He took meticulous work with that corn. He liked to work with the corn. Oh, this is Jim. Jim the bull. All of Uncle Bill's bulls were named Jim. And he said, I can remember so many times when they're going to go visit Plutz's or Pavlik's, he'd tell Herman, well, we'll go get the car out of the shed, and I'm going to go in the barn and throw Jim some hay at. And this is Hulda Bocek, my dad's sister, up in Saskatchewan, and her youngest son, Clarence. And they said on the card, it was a pony that just happened to come to live with him. And he stayed there a couple of weeks, and then they found an owner for it. So that's Uncle Joe and Aunt Hulda. Okay. My dad and mother went up, and my sister Gertie went up to Canada in 1938. And they got this picture. My dad is on the left, and Gertie's in here. And the fellow standing there is Mr. Brown. And what that is we'll back up. What that is in the 30s, there was the dust storms, depression up in Canada, same as it was in the United States, and they had 6 years of failed crops. Times were very, very tough. And a lot of farmers couldn't make it, and the ones that had any money left at all, they certainly couldn't waste it away putting gas in a Model T. So what they did, they took the radiator and the motor and the transmission out of it and put a horse pull back on to use it for a buggy. And it was dubbed the Bennett wagon because it was Prime Minister Bennett was the Prime Minister of Canada at that time, at Saskatchewan. So that's that. Okay, here's my family. That's my grandma in the middle with the apron on, and that's Frank Pavlik on the right. And Mary Pavlik, his wife Mary, way on the left, and then my mother and Gert, and then Uncle Bill. Oh, this is Gert and myself. I'm the little one. As you can see, I must have been wearing hand-me-downs already. But I picked this picture because I wanted to show you what a milk cart was. That was the milk cart. In the very early years, you had to put your milk cans on a sleigh or a buggy and take them to the cheese factory. But then later on, when van camps come into Sturgeon Bay, they had trucks that come out and pick up the milk. But they wouldn't go into your yard because in the spring the yards were too muddy, and in the winter you didn't have snow blowers or snow plows, so they didn't want to come and get stuck. So you had to put your milk out on a stand out by the road. That was your obligation. So in the summertime you could use a cart like so, and in the wintertime you use a sleigh. They made that cart out of a buggy axe and bent the U in it so it was nice and low and slung. Okay, here's a milk stand. What I'm talking about, the cart is sitting right alongside. and the milk cans are up there. The milk truck would drive right alongside, pick up your full cans and set your empty cans out. And that's Herman up on top, playing his accordion. And my dad is sitting on the thing. I think he's playing with a future parts for a violin. Don't they make violin strings out of catgut? Okay, here's my mother and myself and my sister Gertie. That's me and Gert. Okay, that's me. I'm the happy wanderer. And I was about that age when Uncle Bill was going to take that old truck and go fix some fence. So I had to go along with him. So I went along, and then he'd asked me to go back to the truck and bring some staples or some wire or something. And I just had at that time, my mother had bought me a brand new straw hat, and I was wearing it. And then Bill asked me, "How do you like your new straw hat?" I said, it's too hot. And he said, "Let me see, let me look at it." "Oh yeah," I suppose he said that it's so tightly woven your air can't get out of your hat. So he reached in his pocket, he gets his jackknife out, and one little blade is real sharp. He cut a hole right in the top of my head about the size, not quite as big as a golf ball. So that's what happened to my little hat my mother bought for me. Oh, that's my dad and myself. My mother also took the picture. That's my dad in 1952. He's carrying a pail of water to water the chickens on the place that I'm living now. That's my mother by a big tree in the woods. Okay, here we're thrashing behind the homestead barn. That's my Aunt Adeline way to the left. She was Pat Hogan's daughter. She married Herman. Herman Jr. is the next to her pitching bundles in the machine. And that's me up on top. My dad's teaching me how to run the machine, I guess. And that's my dad standing by the weir. And Uncle Bill is way on the ground sacking the grain. Okay, and here is Uncle Bill to the left. Then behind him was his lifetime friend, Eddie Bogenschutz. And now, Eddie Bogenschutz, yeah, I think they were exactly the same age. But Eddie Bogenschutz lived just a half a mile to the east of the Geisel farmstead. But then he moved to Minneapolis and he became an engineer on the locomotive of the Sioux line. And that was a time that the United States was not having good relationships with Germany. And they didn't like him to have a German name like that, so he changed his name to McKee. And that's the way it stayed. In his retirement years, he moved back to Egg Harbor and lived close to his brother Francis. And that's my Uncle Herman next to him, my Grandma Geisel, and Adeline, Herman's wife, Herman Jr.'s wife. Oh, back that up one time. Uncle Bill and Eddie McGee, or Eddie Bogenschutz, they were always kind of tricksters. And Bill told me one time they were down by the creek looking for suckers, and they had their spears. And then he said there was 3 or 4 girls come walking down the road, and they hollered at him, "Come on down here, look at all the fish down here." So they all come down there, and he had all the girls lined up looking for fish. Bill was on one end and Eddie on the other. And Bill said, all once I felt Eddie's spear handle hitting me in the back. And then they knew what to do. One push, they both shoved them all in the water. Okay, here's my dad and Herman having a cool one. Certain times of year they'd buy a little keg of beer and I don't know, Christmas well, this is summertime or fall. Maybe 4th of July, I don't know. And here's Herman chopping with our first chopper, chopping hay. The Farmo lamb. Okay, and here they're unloading it. There was no self-unloaders. You had to lift up the end gate in the back and hook it off into the blower. And here's my dad's first combine, little Massey Harris. Okay, here's a wedding picture of my sister Vione and her husband Ronnie Bino. That's my brother Roy, way on the left. My brother Roy way on the left, and my Uncle Herman, my Aunt Adeline, and the bride and groom. And then I'm in the next one, and Uncle Bill and my sister Gertie. And let's see, they've all passed on except me and my brother Roy. Okay. Here's Uncle Bill. I was taken, I believe, right in 1965 or 66. In the spring, I was planting oats, and Bill would stay with the truck, and he'd always have when I'd come around and need a fill, he'd have the bags of fertilizer ready to be dumped in, and that blue can that had the grass seed in, and then he had the bags of oats all untied, ready to pour in. And when I left, then if there was a stone laying there, he'd throw it on the truck, as you can see. And Shirley, my wife, she brought Bill, I think it was a bowl of chili and a sandwich, if I'm not mistaken. And he's sitting there having that. Okay, here's Christmas time, and it's my family. In the front is Wade, Tara, and Jamie, and Jody on the left on top, Shirley and I, and Heidi. Okay, these are all my cousins up in Canada. These were Joe and Hulda's family. They're on the bottom. She had 6 boys. There was Roy, Floyd, Arnold, Harold, Ernie, and Clarence. And up above them, the same way, there was Roy's wife Myrtle, and Irene, and Teresa, and Lucille, and Eunice, and Marlene. They're all gone. Oh, here's my daughter and her family, Jessie Shartner and Jody, my daughter, and Emily and Riley. Here's the Henschels, Mike and Jamie, and Kevin and Mark and Brian. And here's Aaron and Tara LeClaire and Emily, Elena and Reed. And we're back to the homestead. I guess that concludes it, huh? Well, at this time, I'd like to thank the Sevastopol Historical Society for giving me the opportunity to have you go back in time and meet my family. And I guess if there's any questions, we could see if I could field them.
Bernie, I thought you said that they were shearing a horse. Was they shearing a horse in that one picture?
Yeah.
And why did they do that? Or
Well, I suppose it had his winter coat on and making it cooler. I don't know.
Okay. Let's keep them cooler. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that's right, Judy, or not. But my mother-in-law told me one time, if you don't know the answer, make something up. Thank you.
Bernie, will you take more questions?
What about when you build new barns and sheds? Did you sell your own wood?
Say it again?
When you build new barns and sheds, did you sell your own wood?
We saw they got the logs out of our swamp, and then they took it. And they had mills come over later on, but before that they took the logs down to Valmy and they sawed down there.
I got an old picture here of a thrashing crew, and my sister died this summer, and she had it, and I'm trying to find out where that was and what time it was. Now, them are different wagons. Them wagons are all pitched.
Yeah. No, I couldn't help you here. That's running with a steam engine here,
Yeah,
and that's
17 men on there and 3 women.
I wish I could help you out. It's a nice picture.
Bernie?
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. When did your family switch from horses to the tractors? I mean, you had really early tractors there. So
One was in 1937 at F12, you seen with the grain drill. That was I think that was the tractor that got rid of the horses. Because it's 2 years later they sold the last horse.
Wow, that's,
They bought the farm all in 1941 and there was no need for the horses anymore. They let them go. And the team was a very good team, and it had done no wrong for the Geisels. And my Uncle Bill told me he went along with, I believe it was Bill Jarman, down to the Fox farm because he wanted to see him put down. But somebody else wouldn't buy him and hurt him. They wanted to, it was the end. So, anybody else? Yep.
Did you guys always raise dairy cattle? Or did you
Do I have dairy cattle?
Did you always have dairy cattle
Yeah,
in the
the
family?
Geisels always had dairy cattle. So,
What area of Saskatchewan were your relatives up at? What area, what town?
Hodgeville, Saskatchewan. I think a town that's a little bigger than that close by is Morris.
It's Prairie.
Huh?
Out of Prairie Land.
Oh yeah, that's Prairie Land, right.
Could you tell the story of why you've got so many pictures?
Oh, the reason I got so many pictures is because when my dad moved to Canada to live with his sister, for some reason or other, he was only 17 years old and he bought a camera, which was really kind of a extravagant thing for a young kid to buy when cameras were not available like they are now. But he took pictures that he thought were worthy of taking a picture of, and he developed them himself. It come with some kind of kit, I suppose, and he did that. So that's why we got them pictures. Really, really fortunate he did that, or else we wouldn't have nothing to go by. So I hope you all enjoyed them pictures. I mean, they definitely enjoyed it.